going with some of the footage from my trip to New Zealand, where I got a chance to be able to spend some time with Guy Molloy, who was head coach of the women's national team of New Zealand. He's also the Melbourne Boomers head coach. Tremendous coach, and we had him on the basketball podcast, I believe the third episode, where he's a tremendous resource as well, where he outlined his philosophy and different things that way. So it was wonderful to be able to see him coach live and in person. And Guy has been a basketball immersion member basically since year one. So we certainly have a lot in common. So I think it fits and aligns with what we do and what we try and share with basketball immersion. So I think you'll enjoy seeing some of the concepts that have some dual value in the sense that we do a lot of the same things, and you'll see them done in a similar and in a different way as well. Also today, we announced a special retreat with Dave Love, NBA shooting coach, which is going to be May 8th, 10th. If you're interested in more information on that, then hit me up, DM me, and I'll send you some more information about that as well. But a special opportunity to be able to spend 3 days in beautiful Palm Desert, California, where I live, and warm weather, and be able to have an opportunity to be able to hang out with an NBA shooting coach and myself, and be able to get really intimate and interactive in terms of your learning. So hopefully that interests you as well. Let's get started here, and we'll get to the video and be able to share. So cool. One of the first things that I saw in both my trips in Australia and New Zealand is when I spent time with basically all the pro teams I spent time with, whether it was Will Weaver and Sydney Kings, or it was Nico Cornell with the New Zealand Breakers, or all the different teams that I got a chance to see. I saw a lot of different fun activations to start practice. Now, these are teams, keep in mind, these are ideal situations. These are teams that have enough time and enough gym access to be able to do a proper activation prior to practice. If you don't have that time and you only have an hour and a half 2 times a week, or an hour and a half once a day, then I don't know if I would spend time on activation as much. And if I did, I would do it off the court prior to getting onto the court. But these were some activations that happened on the court. The first one isn't, I don't have video of it, but it was an example, was that the strength and conditioning coach had a tennis racket, and they would hit tennis balls at players, and players would have to catch different balls, different situations. And they made it a real competitive game. I saw that in 2 different places where the strength and conditioning coach used the tennis racket and hit balls at players. And again, they created kind of like a knockout version of the game. And he would hit different size balls, and it became a real kind of fun, dynamic type of thing. This is what Coach Molloy did with his team. This was the day before their Olympic qualifier. So this is, I believe it was the day before, not the shoot around. I have to remember that. But anyways, it's just a game of keep away with everyone involved. Basically, if you touch the ball, I'll go back here for a second. If you touch the ball, then that person replaces you in the circle. Again, we've all seen games like this. You've all probably done games like this. Just wanted you to see that at that level, they did some fun little activations like that. They got their team talking, having fun, and doing some dynamic stuff like that. So basically, again, if you touch the ball, then you replace them. And or if the coach got tired of watching 2 people in there too long, then really you can change it at any time. And it varies the number of players and different things depending on who's practicing. Okay, chaotic starts. This is a big thing for me. I'm big on this. I'll show you an example in a second too from us, but or something that I've seen and I've tried too. But chaotic starts to 5 on 5 repetition. Just how very rarely I've seen good coaches start 5 on 5 reps from, say, a half court check ball situation. More often than not, I talk about this, is that start your reps from 3/4 court at least, because when you cross half court, that's the line of deployment where your offense usually starts. So if you don't cross half court, your players don't get a very good perspective on the fact that that's when offense starts. So really important concept there. But beyond that, just some different ways to be able to create a little bit of randomness and a little bit of figuring it out for your players. And this was an example that Coach Guy used, and we can hear some of the volume. Volume is loud enough. But anyways, all he does, you can see here, he calls out, they're kind of standing there. He calls out what they're going to run, and then he calls out who's on offense, and then he throws the ball out. So just a random start. So it was white ball, they have to run X play, and then blacks was in this defense, and they had to figure it out. And then more so, you'll see it in the next possession here, where he counts. So in this one, they got into it quickly from the point of throwing it out, but they're still organizing, and now they get into the flow. In this one here, they're much quicker to it, and they figured it out much quicker from a random start. So just again, coming back, this is a great time of year for you to use something like this, because as you approach the end of the year, you're less likely to do maybe a number of full court reps because of workload management and different things that kind of influence trying to keep your players fresh. But you want to get those mental reps and then those half court reps, offense versus defense. So this chaotic start, which is basically, again, call what you're doing, call and make it random. Like at this point, they should be able to execute whatever you want on demand. If you're approaching the end of your season, if you're approaching the beginning of your season, that may be different, but approaching something and just call out something the offense is doing, the defense is doing, and then drop the ball, call whose team it is, and then have them figure it out. And then he has a countdown going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if they didn't get into it, they didn't get organized, they lose possession or you lose points, depending on your philosophy with that. So it's real neat. This first one, you actually see him throw out the ball. The second one, you don't. But when I post the video, I'll post the video when I post this master class. You'll be able to hear it because there's a little bit of volume. You see, it took them a long time to figure that out. Really important concept. And then this one, they get into it and they're into it much. All right. I was so happy to see this. I don't think it happens enough, and I hope you're doing this. This is something that I share with all coaches, especially the ones that I get a chance to work with a little bit more intimately, uh, platinum members, or certainly with different consulting I do. But I'll share it with you, and we have an example of this on the website. If you want to really make a difference on your team, spend a ton of time. I'm a huge believer, and I need to do like a full hour clinic on this inbound defense. I was always offended if we got scored on inbound because we can scout, we can prepare, and then we have our rules or our non-negotiables that we can apply. Getting scored on inbound was something that was non-negotiable in our program. And then the other part of that is that we spend an immense amount of time on breaking down our inbound. So instead of just doing 5-on-5 inbound, definitely not doing 5-on-0. I don't think there's anything more useless, honestly, than 5-on-0 inbound. But 5-on-5 inbound to be able to obviously work the offense and defensive reads. But then we can even take it a step further, and we can go to be able to break it down. The example I have on the website is 3-on-3. I'll share with you. But in this example, you'll see from Guy Molloy that they actually broke it down into basically a 3-on-2. Now, the 3-on-2 situation was offense had the inbounder +2, and the defense had 2 covering on. But it broke down the one screen that they really wanted to get good at, which was kind of a beginning action to their inbound. And they wanted to be able to give possibilities and give different reads to the players to be able to try and figure out what's possible. And obviously, superseding everything is the goal of inbound is to get the ball inbound. So that was another part that goes with this. But you'll see some slips, different things like that with 2 different practices that I got a chance to see. So in this one, you can see the lob, and it brings to point, by the way, really great teaching points here, which is it's hard to hit a moving target. This player probably should have planted as soon as they stopped. That was the cue to be able to throw it. But you can also see the defender here talk about how they're in a poor position to be able to take away that lob and different actions that come from that. So that was 2-on-2. Here again is or sorry, 3-on-2. This is a 3-on-2 situation with the inbounder as the +1. But you can see here that the defender can't see the ball, so the inbounder actually threw it off her back, which I thought was brilliant because again, doesn't that bring a great teaching point about the defense and what are you doing to be able to see the ball? And then obviously this is an independent decision by the passer. And the hardest part about getting good on inbound is quality of the passer. I mean, you can run the same inbound one year to the next and not be as good, even though the inbound play was outstanding, just based on who's inbounding the ball. And I've experienced that. When I've graduated certain players, our inbound efficiency went down just because we didn't have a player making as good of decisions on the inbound. So that's when we started to figure out what should we do to be able to improve inbound. And what we figured out is that we needed to break it down. We break down offense 3-on-3. Why don't we break down inbound 3-on-3? Or in this case, obviously advantage, disadvantage. You see again, here's a great situation where a player on the screen, and they introduced an extra player here, but it basically becomes inbound now and bringing it together in terms of 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 situation. You see one of these reads that I saw a lot, which was when they did this 3-on-2 inbound situation, you would see that slip read where their defender fell asleep and now they'd start to get it and be able to play out of that. Another huge part of his practices were advantage, disadvantage drills. He sometimes started with this in terms of some warm-up stuff, and then sometimes he just did it as breakdown. But you could see it combines skills, decision making with, again, offense versus defense. So you got these perception action coupling reps, and they did a really good job at being able to incorporate them. Now, basically, you can't really see it. There's water bottles on the floor, but certain players had to run down, um, had to run around certain pylons. If you see it here, again, I'll post it, but this is just an example of a drill. But offense had to dribble around a pylon, run around a pylon, run around a pylon, and then it became this situation where the defense had to run around certain pylons. Maybe my only thing might be to not use pylons and just say spots to be able to improve kind of efficiency in terms of that, especially if you don't have a lot of staff. But there are different rules for the offense and the defense based on what they had to do. Here you'll see it again. I'll try and play it. 2 defense, 3 offense, and it was a 3-on-2 advantage. Watch it again. 3-on-2 advantage somehow. Players coming in from different spots. And then you can talk about decision making, all the different things. And I'll connect this, and I think it was Jordan that just asked a question. I'll come back to that question. A really good one as well when I show you some of the links that are on the website that kind of supports these things. We'll talk about some of the questions. But coaches, keep posting your questions. Okay, this is another concept that I got watching this practice. 2-on-1 shooting is such a huge thing that we do within our practices. And I was like, okay, this is kind of neat. This is a bit of a progression to that. Is now in 2-on-1 shooting, the emphasis was on jamming. So now the player, they were a little bit closer, and it was almost like that monkey in the middle situation. And you could create constraints where a player would have to pass the ball once, or maybe there had to be 2 passes before it was live. But it was one of these situations at a 2-on-1 shooting where instead of the defender being traditionally where we would start a defender from here in a live closeout situation, the defender basically handed off the ball and jammed the first pass. And you'll see here where they get into more fakes. I'm not a big fake coach. I believe fakes take away decisions, especially for young players. Faking is more of an advanced skill. But in theory here, the concept, especially as I was thinking about this relative to coaching at camps, especially youth that I coach, is they really don't have a counter to when someone jams them and they want to pass. So they have to learn how to pass outside their body, behind their body, maybe across their body, or maybe inside hand, but different things like that to be able to get the ball where they want to go. So I think in my mind, this is a great progression or just add on to 2-on-1 shooting to be able to challenge your passers and decision makers in different ways. So because it's really close, the challenge tends to get a little bit closer because the spacing's close on the 2 side, but you can see there's a lot more jam situations in terms of that. Another huge situation for me which is obvious if you follow basketball immersion. It's always add a defender. And my big thing here is that when we add a defender, we add decision making. So in a normal, say, situation here, which you'll see, this is just zone offense. They just run 5-on-5 zone. And this actually happened after, but you'll see the progression. This situation here, flex screen, reverse pivot seal, and then cutter through, decisions based on that. That this player here was working on trying to determine the advantage based on that seal and this player's right there. And then if not, it could flow into a pinch post against the zone. And you'll see here, they didn't really get anything done out of it. But what was great is before they did that, they really broke down this situation. And you can see here, here's that exact situation. Reverse pivot, player right here gets on top. This is the defender. And now it's a 2-on-1. So just by adding one defender to the 4-on-0, it became more of a decision-making situation. Now, whether they pass to the pinch post to pass to the flex cut, or they pass from the top, it happened in both situations here where that one defender is live to be able to disrupt. And that's a great example of adding one defender that I talked about. But you can see they actually aren't that successful. And you would think it's a really easy advantage, but because the constraint is you have to attack the 2-on-1, this player can't just shoot or drive. You have to attack the 2-on-1. This defender becomes a lot more relevant, and then the decision making becomes a little bit more realistic. So there, even with that deep catch, no advantage, drop pass. So different things that happen off of those specific situations. Now, I might only suggest that, and coach probably progresses it to this point, that I believe 4-on-2, 5-on-2 is a little bit better because you can have someone matched up against the passer, and that gives a little bit more realistic situation. And I'll show you an example of this on the website too. And then 4-on-3 decision. So they did zone offense, which you see in a second. Zone offense right here against three defenders that kind of played a zone. And then you'll see advantage, disadvantage here, 3-on-2. So this is man. This is working on ball screen, where depending on what the defender did on the ball, if they went under, then they could flip it, shake, which is a rescreen, shake it, rescreen, and now play out of that. And then this player here, everyone's live. It's a 3-on-2 advantage. And you can see the player at the rim has to make a decision right now because the ball has an advantage. And now these are real decision-making situations and also an application of skill to be able to develop those. All right, coming back. Let me first flip up here. Something for you to look at. You're on this call, by the way. Thank you for joining us live. This is one of those examples of chaos starts, which is controversial for some people. It's a 2-on-2 situation, but I don't know if any of you have ever tried this, but doing something from advantage, disadvantage, where it's a chaos start, an example, this would be off a turnover. So it's live play off of a turnover where you have to organize and figure things out. Okay, let's get to some of your questions. How often do you think you should break down inbound? I mean, how often do you work on inbound might be the question. This would be daily for us that we work on inbound. We do something called half court, full court, which is on the website, but half court, full court from inbound, where we would always start our offense, defense, 5-on-5 reps from an inbound play. So we would work on inbound every day. Like, I think it's arguably the most important special situation because it's the one that happens the most. Everyone obviously talks about ATOs and end of game situations, but just baseline inbound and sideline inbound are the things that happen the most. So we'd spend an inordinate amount of time on that. And then breaking it down, let's just say every other day, we would break it down or break down some situation within the inbound to be able to hopefully improve our decision making out of it. But they might be very short periods, right? It might be just a 4-minute period, 5 reps for one team, 5 reps for the other, just so they're aware of the situation, they're aware of the possibility. So it doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing. Maybe initially it's like a 10-minute segment of breaking down the different options at a 3-on-3 or 4-on-3 advantage or whatnot. But as you move on, it becomes a really quick hit, say 3-on-3. I'll post an example from the website if you haven't seen it. right now, but 3-on-3, and say we do this 5 reps for white, 5 reps for blue, and then that's it. We're done. That's all we're talking about in terms of getting some mental reps to be able to kind of say, hey, listen, this is what we should be aware of. And it can become scout specific as well, which is a really important concept. If we play in a certain team and we know they switch out, or we know that they're on the ball, or we know they play in the hole, then we can talk about the different things that are possible for that week's opponent as well. Uh, from Jamie, what are your favorite warm up drills and coaching under 15 boys games are starting to slow for us? So you need something that's more activation. If you're talking about pregame warm up, if you haven't seen it yet, Jamie, I have our pregame warm up example on the website. What we avoid is layup lines. Um, Definitely avoid layup lines. I just find that's monotonous and kind of just a routine. So we're more likely to do BDT, different things out of BDT, different things out of just different types of pass and cut, or different cut shootings. An example that's on the website that was a part of our warm up time, and we honestly went to a lot more just pure shooting, which was 4 lines, get a bunch of shots, and make sure the last 3 minutes of our warm up was really really intense, and different types of activation things. If I can find it, there's an example of kind of a team playing tag where it was like literally tag along kind of the block to block, so to speak, and just kind of chase tag. Chase drill that's also on our YouTube page would be another great example. Something that's kind of fun and just quick activations. You might want to try it. This is the pregame warm up right here, and assuming I can find it quickly, I'll find Chase. But it might seem weird, and your players might not be kind of into it initially. But you have to convince them on something has to change. Like if you're starting off games slow, then we've got to try something that's a little bit different. Um, I watched a Division 1 game this weekend, and I don't think enough is devoted to halftime warm up. But I watched a division. This is Chase drill, which I would use probably for young kids. I think this would be a great kind of 2 minute activation at the end of your warm up to be able to get them fired up and moving a little bit faster. But this would be, you can adapt it. There's different things to be able to do, whether you have the ball or not. On YouTube, there's an example without the ball too. But like, think outside the box, think divergently, try things. Don't just go with tradition. I think traditional warm up, by and large, is a waste of time. Number one, layup lines, you don't get a lot of shots anyways. So what's the point? And then we would more likely go 4 lines, shoot a bunch of shots, and then do something fast activation again. But anyways, this Division 1 game I watched, halftime, players came out. For some reason, both teams only used 2 balls. So they did layup lines with 2 balls. And you can imagine how half-assed it was, and how, again, there was no activation. There was no mental activation, especially. It was kind of just routine, and it didn't seem to make sense to me. If you're going to do kind of out of halftime, usually only have 4 minutes or so. I would just have them shoot. Once everyone's there, say under 2 minutes, I would do some fast activation, which might be run chase, some type of sprint, some type of thing like that. Just speed activation to be able to get players moving a little bit faster in terms of that. But these are really good questions. I'm glad you're asking them, because all these questions are important in terms of understanding kind of how divergently you can do things a little bit different. Jamie, I think I missed a question here. What about dealing with a wide range of skills? How do I push the strong and net out the weaker players lost? Well, again, Jamie, it depends on the philosophy. It depends on what's the goal here in terms of the things that you're doing. My thing has always been to coach to the highest level. If you coach to the highest level, you're going to raise the middle, hopefully. But if you coach to the middle or you coach to the lowest level, you're probably going to bring down the top. And the whole goal ultimately is that by raising the top and coaching the best players, that you're more likely to raise more players within the team. If I coach to the lowest level, I know I'm probably just bringing people back. And no matter how much, and this may sound heartless, no matter how much I coach the weaker players, how much am I going to improve them within team practice? Weaker players are weaker players for a reason. They haven't spent enough time working on their skills. They're new to the game, whatever it may be. We don't want to lose them. We don't want to disengage them. We want to keep them in the sport. We want to retain them because ultimately we don't know, especially if we're talking a 13-year-old. They might end up being better than some of the better players currently, but we have to find some way to be able to connect and inspire them to be able to do homework and stuff on their own because confidence and skill go together. Skill equals confidence. If you're confident, it's because you're skilled. So the players that are weaker are usually the ones that aren't as skilled. We need to spend extra time. If we don't have extra time, we need to inspire them to spend more time on their own getting better. My daughters, 6 and 8, for example, I'll talk about them a lot. I try not to coach them. I try and just create an environment where they want to be outside and just practice basketball. So I'll give you an example. I posted some videos of they're both girls, so some girls playing basketball, say a 10-year-old girls mixtape, or I can't remember. There's a player of the year for girls high school that's going to UConn. So I posted her videos on their iPad. So when we took a road trip this weekend, they watched some of these girls do some drills. They watched some of these girls play. And for the last few days, they've been out there practicing. Whatever they're practicing, I don't know, but they're out there spending time on the ball. And that's ultimately the most important part about raising the weaker players is it needs to be player led and they need to spend more time on their own outside of your practice. And I would not have a hard time telling parents that, look, your son or daughter is not as good as someone because they haven't spent as much time getting better. Now, that could be again because they're late to the sport or they're new to the sport. All those things are real factors. But you as a coach can't devote all your time to the weaker players. You need to devote your time to the best players and raising the middle and ultimately, hopefully, inspiring the weaker. And that becomes a lot more mini conversational. We try to run basic layup with a defender and then move to 2-on-1 thing. Yeah, that's great. I mean, the one problem I've always had with offense versus defense is it's just kind of show me stuff, which is fine. So, maybe 2-on-1 shooting might be a little bit better because offense is almost always going to have success. What I never wanted in warm up is that there was a perception that somehow someone wasn't having success. So that would be my one thing to be able to understand. So I might skip basic layups, 2-on-1. That's the decision. But I would think about some other things to be able to kind of activate them. And look, if it's not working, it's easy to go to your players and say, listen, we're not off to good starts. We're going to try something different. This may work, it may not work, but we don't have to do something we did at the beginning of the year just because we put it in the beginning of the year. We need to try things and we need to figure things out. And that's a constant challenge for you as a coach. So just whatever. Maybe there's a favorite thing that you do in practice that your players love. Why not do it for warm up? Heck, run plays for warm up. Like I don't know why we're so fearful of what the other team's going to see. Like we could run our whole offense prior to a warm up, and yeah, it might cue the defense or our opponent to something, but by and large, it's not going to impact things because it comes down to the reads and the decisions within what we run, and those different things. I love that you just said that. I'll dig through the site more and figure it out, and that's the whole goal. If there's nothing else, we're going to go every other week for master classes for the indefinite period. Gives everyone more time to be able to digest in between master classes. I've got some real good stuff coming up on a pregame shoot around for the next one because I had a chance to attend a Division I NCAA shoot around. And I can talk about that and speak to that a little bit as well. So we'll do that for the next master class in 2 weeks, which I believe is February 11th. So please join us live. Thanks for supporting the website. Thanks for supporting your coaching. And I look forward to talking to many of you more as we move forward towards the end of your season. Thanks, everyone.